Nigel Farage is our guest, UK member of the European Union Parliament, the leader of opposition to the New World Order in government in Europe. This is the man who is eloquently every week standing up to these people. Now they just turn his mic off, call him names, and then don't let him respond. The United Nations all over Copenhagen has their armed police on the streets declaring it a UN zone. At accredited press events, if you ask Al Gore or the IPCC head about ClimateGate, you are drug out at gunpoint. I mean, these are authoritarians. These are the children of Joe Stalin, of Mao Zedong, of Adolf Hitler. And when I say that, I mean it. I've watched them. They want control, and they want to squash all dissent. Nigel Farage, you've been around them for 9 years with these vipers. How would you describe them?
They are truly dreadful people. I don't by that mean I disagree with their point of view. They are truly dreadful people. They will stop at nothing to get their goal. I remember a nice little anecdote. On the night of the Dutch referendum a few years ago on the EU Constitution, and the result came out and 2/3 of the Dutch had said, no, we don't want this. And I was with about 50 skeptics in the European Parliament, in the members' bar, having a bit of a party, celebrating what I hoped would be the triumph of democracy over bureaucracy. And at that moment, a German MEP, a guy called Mr. Leinen, walked past me. And he'd been one of the authors of this constitution. And I said to him, oh, Joe, I said, do you want to join us for a drink to celebrate democracy in the Netherlands? And he looked at me. He said, no, I won't accept your drink. He said, and anyway, you enjoy your little victory tonight. He said, we have 50 different ways to win. And it was chilling, because it just about summed it up. There is literally nothing that will stop these people from achieving their goal. They are fanatics. You know, we got rid of Mussolini and Hitler. We got rid of what was seen to be those extreme nationalisms. Well, we've got a new one now, and it's called the European Union, and it's every bit as dangerous as those things that went before.
I was reading the Treaty of Rome, 1957, that really established the EU. It states that by stealth. And they talk about, oh, we've learned from Napoleon and Hitler not to do this militarily. We're going to do this via bureaucracy and taxation and creeping. This is a premeditated system funded by mega-rich that want monopolies, using communists as their henchmen who just want a piece of the middle class's pie. I mean, this is a truly piratical group from my study who know they're criminal. I mean, this is a very wicked group. How many of them are just true acolytes who believe in collectivism, and how many of them are true pirates?
Well, that's always a tough one to answer, but I can tell you. I mean, you know, we've had, for the last 5 years, one of the European commissioners, a man from Hungary, Mr. Kovacs, who was for many, many years the right-hand man of the dictator, Mr. Kadar, in Hungary, a fully paid-up member of the Soviet Communist Party. He's been an EU commissioner for the last 5 years. Directly for the Soviets before the wall came down.
Sir, can you start over? Something cut out your phone line. Go back to the communist commissars now in the EU.
Yeah, of the 27 EU commissioners that we have now, and these are the people with the real power in Europe. They're not elected, they're appointed, but these are the people who have the sole right to propose legislation that is effective in all our countries. 6 of those work directly for the Soviet communist regime before the wall came down. And that isn't going to improve particularly, because we've got Mr. Van Rompuy, who's going to take over as the European president. But the new foreign minister that's taking over is a lady called Baroness Ashton from Britain. And from 1980 to 82, she was the treasurer of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament in Britain, a campaign that wanted us to unilaterally disarm, and an organisation that was directly in receipt of funds from the Communist Party of Great Britain.
Stay there.
These are the people.
Stay there, Nigel Farage, a member of Parliament. We have that clip of where you confront them coming up. We'll go right back to you.
I thought this was going to be a big, proud moment. I mean, it's taken you 8.5 years of bullying, of lying, of ignoring democratic referendums. 8.5 years it's taken you to get this treaty through, and on the 1st of December, you will have it. And of course, the architect of all of this, Giscard, wanted from this constitutional treaty for the European Union to have a big global voice. But I'm afraid the leaders have suffered from a collective loss of nerve. They've decided that they want their faces to be up on the global stage, not somebody from the European Union, and so we've got appointed a couple of political pygmies. The Kissinger question of who to call in Europe hasn't really been answered, has it? I guess the answer can only be Mr. Barroso, because he's the only one that anybody in the world has ever heard of, and is probably the big winner out of these posts. No wonder, sir, you look so happy this morning. And we have a new President of Europe, Herman Van Rompuy. Doesn't exactly trip off the tongue, does it? I can't see him stopping the traffic in Beijing or Washington. I doubt anybody in Brussels would even recognise who he is. And yet, he's going to be paid a salary that is bigger than Obama's, which tells you all you need to know about this European political class and how they look after themselves. But at least he's an elected politician, unlike Baroness Cathy Ashton, who really is the true representation of the modern day political class. In some ways she's ideal, isn't she? She's never had a proper job and she's never been elected to anything in her life. So I guess she's perfect for this European Union.
Excuse me, Mr. Farage.
Yes.
I would like to put down your postages. You made your presentation.
Right, okay.
Is
Just
enough for
calm
us.
down, chaps.
Okay,
Calm down, chaps.
please continue.
Calm now. But, I mean, she's never been elected to anything, and no one knows who she is. Even the Prime Minister was talking about Baroness Ashdown as opposed to Ashton. I mean, no one has ever heard of her. She's even less well known than Herman Van Rompuy. I mean, that takes some doing, doesn't it? She's risen without trace. She's part of this post-democratic age. She married well. She married an advisor and a friend and supporter of Tony Blair and got put in the House of Lords. When she was in the House of Lords, she was given one big job, and the job was to get the Lisbon Treaty through the House of Lords, and to do so pretending that it was entirely different to the EU Constitution. So she's good at keeping a straight face, and she vigorously crushed any attempt in the House of Lords for the British people to
There
have a
you
referendum.
go. He's about 5 feet from her, telling her to her face. Then the current head, the sitting chair of the EU, shuts him down, tells him to shut up, and then turns his mic off and cuts to the head of the Poland delegation to call him a bare-butted monkey. And then they tell him, you're not allowed to call names, which he's not doing. He's exposing their fraud. But then we're allowed to call you names. European Union Member of Parliament from the UK, or UEP, Nigel Farage, is our guest. Thank you so much for being on with us, sir. Tell us about that little exchange, because it continues on for some time. It's up on the UK Independence Party website, UKIP.org, if folks want to see the full 30 minutes of it.
It's a classic exchange. I mean, okay, you know, my tone maybe somewhat cutting or biting or sarcastic, but I didn't say anything that wasn't 100% true, and I didn't use language that was abusive or wrong or foul. I merely pointed out that Mr. Van Rompuy was a bureaucrat and that Baroness Ashton had had these very worrying links, in my opinion, with the campaign for nuclear disarmament, which was being funded by the Soviets. And for that, I was told by the President of the European Parliament that what I'd said was unacceptable, that it simply wasn't right that I should behave in this way. And whilst I was speaking, I was being jeered, embarrassed and abused. I mean, that always happens now, every time I get up to speak.
Yeah, we can hear lots of chanting, but we can't make it out. I mean, were they just hissing and cussing, or...?
Yeah, they shout and they scream and all the rest of it. But, I mean, I guess all that you know, what you really get from the microphone is me. But, no, they're always very abusive towards me. But it's perfectly okay for them to say that I'm mentally ill. It's perfectly okay for them to call me a monkey. It's fine for them to say that if people support Mr. Farage, it will open the door to fascism. I mean, they can, you know, there is no term of abuse that these people will not sink to battle against those of us that are arguing for democracy and are arguing for people to have their own voice and to say what they want to say. And in fact, after that exchange, I was called up to meet the President of the Parliament at 5 o'clock that night. And it reminded me of being in trouble at school and having to go and see the headmaster, you know, and you wait outside the study. And I went in, and I said, look, I said, there's nothing I said or did here that could be deemed to be unparliamentary or wrong in any way at all. Was there, Mr. President? And he said, well, you called them pygmies. And I had trouble not laughing and wetting myself. I said, but surely, you know, to call people pygmies, I mean, I said, they're not exactly giants, are they? I said, in future, I'll call them Lilliputians if that makes you happy. You know, when it came to it, there was nothing they could say. I am not abusive, I am not foul-mouthed, I am not rude, and I am 100% factual. And it reminds me, Alex, of a time 5 years ago when I revealed to the Parliament that the French commissioner had in fact been convicted of embezzlement in the year 2000. Yeah? And I revealed this to the Parliament. Well, it was like a hand grenade had gone off.